The thing about loss is you don't lose someone once. You lose someone a first initial time. That is the inciting event. And then if you live long enough without them, you lose them repeatedly for as long as you're alive and they're not. And that means that you have to get accustomed to burying someone repeatedly, which, if not thought of in a way that is generous, can be too daunting to live with. But on the other hand, if you believe, as I do, that grief is kind of just an emotion that's knocking on the door of memory and asking you to recall something, then there's real gratitude in that. There's real gratitude in recollection. There's real gratitude in me reaching for my mother's voice even when I don't retrieve it, because I'm reaching for my mother nonetheless.
Man, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for
I was remembering back on the first time that we had gone to get coffee, or tried to. We were supposed to meet at Stoff's.
Yeah.
No offense, Kenny. We were supposed to meet at Stoff's, not Roosevelt. And we were texting back and forth, and Hanif was like, yeah, let's do Stoff's this day. Let's do the GV one. And I was like, cool, yeah, GV1, let's do it. And he was sitting in German Village, and I was sitting in Grandview. And so I totally thought that you were gonna get us back tonight, and you were gonna go to the Long Street Roosevelt.
Well, no, only because I was in there earlier. The Long Street Roosevelt's like my home coffee shop because I live like a few blocks away, and so I'm in there like 4 times a week, like the folks here know. And so even if I thought that it was at the Long Street Roosevelt, when I went in there today, I was very quickly reminded that it was here, which is a good, that's another mercy.
No, yeah. Thank you again for being here.
Yeah, of course.
And Reed, I know you're about to go on tour again in the fall, and you're busy.
Everyone's busy.
Everyone's busy.
Everyone here is busy in some capacity.
Yeah, man. What would you say is, like, from that standpoint, like, how is the busy benefit? And so I think, like, a lot of people get paralyzed by the busy, especially within the conversation of mental health, where it's like, well, I just feel busy. I feel like I'm burning the candles at both ends. I feel like I can't catch up, or I can't catch a break, or maybe I've said yes to too much. Like, how can the busy benefit, and how has it benefited you in this way?
I mean, if anything, it's allowed me to prioritize my pleasures because I am distinctly aware of what I am sacrificing. I'm distinctly aware of the things I'm being kept away from. I run. I don't like saying I'm a runner necessarily, but I suppose given the amount of time in a week that I dedicate to running, there's no other definition for it. But, so whatever, I'm a runner. I run like in between 6 to 8 miles a day, 5 days a week, and then I do one very big run on Sundays. It's like anywhere between 12 and 18 miles, depending on how I'm feeling. And so, but like the whole purpose of it, right, is for me, that's kind of stealing time back. I don't, my email's not there, my phone's, you can't reach me when I'm running, and I spend a lot of time in my head because I'm thinking about this idea that I have to exist beyond what I produce. So many people's legacies people have these ideas about legacy that I don't think operate in the way that mine does. If I were to die tomorrow, and at least here, I guess everywhere else I can't control, but here in this place I live and have lived my whole life, pretty much, with the exception of like 2 cursed years in Connecticut. If the language around my death or not being present anymore was all about the shit I made, you know what I mean? Like, that would be devastating for me, I think. That would be really mournful. I mean, I guess it would be none of my business because I'd be dead. That said, I think I want to live a life where the things I produce are almost secondary to the way I've lived. And I think that's really in the mode of, say, the artists I've admired most, say Toni Morrison, who's also an Ohioan, who really lived in a way that was almost self-sacrificial. Yes, Toni Morrison also is like the greatest living writer, you know what I mean, like the greatest writer who's ever lived maybe, right? But even if Toni Morrison were not that, or in addition to being that, she's also someone that people remember as someone who left a landmark on the places she was due to how she carried herself and lived in the world. And I think if you choose to be in a place and of a place like I am here, I can't really give into this. Yeah, I'm busy. We're all busy. My life is sure busier than some. I appreciate the fact that there are things that are happening in my life that are maybe a bit unfathomable to, say, my father, who just worked a 9-to-5 most of his life. I get all of those things, but that doesn't actually separate me from my neighbors. It can't. Otherwise, I'm not being a good steward of the place I love, and I am separating myself from the people and putting myself at a place higher than I should be based off of what I produce. I might not be able to produce things always. This might be the last book I write. I might wake up tomorrow and be like, I want to do something else.
You want to be a professional runner?
Yeah, I want to be a professional runner. Yeah.
Nah, I think like hearing you say that, it's like you are living so aligned to your personal values. One of the best workshops, or I think my favorite workshop that we do as an organization, is centered on that. And so what we feel like is a lot of foundational issues with people's generalized anxiety or depression or generalized mental health struggles is living a life unaligned with personal values, or they've never even really thought of those things.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, I think that I'm supposed to live in this way, or I think that the biggest value that my country or my society or my family or my community is in what I produce, then I live in that way, but I feel so distant from who I actually am. How do you break free, or maybe how have you broken free from that? Because I'm sure you've felt the pressure to, as an artist or as a performer, as an author, of saying like, sometimes I feel like my value might be in what I produce. How have you broken free from that?
Well, I think I'm really fortunate to live in the place I grew up and to love the place I grew up, because your value system aligns. For me, I guess I can't speak for everyone. My value system aligns based off of what that community I love tells me or shows me. And I'm fortunate in that I do think that my work and my presence, or whatever you want to call it, has allowed more people in this place to turn towards me or know that I am here and exist here. But even before this, before I even wrote a book, I was in artistic communities in Columbus where the value was never what you were making, it was what you're adding as a person. And we have still parts of that. I know Kim Leddy's in the room, right? And so Kim every year pours into brilliant young writers like Cynthia without any expectation of one day, because every writer in that room at Mosaic isn't going to become Cynthia. That's, obviously, respectfully, whatever. But it's just impossible. The percentage it's impossible. Right. Every writer, there's, how many kids you got at Mosaic every year? In those two classes, 30? 50. So 50 high school students, you might get 2 Cynthias, maybe 3. But no one, Kim and these people who come in to work in those Mosaic workshops and those classrooms are not coming in because they're saying, I'm trying to invest in the next Cynthia or whomever, like Cynthia or whoever else has come out of that, like Alex Scott or these folks who have done brilliant things. To strip away that idea of investment, it's not even like I'm pulling up to invest in you. It's just like I'm coming to this place because something magical is happening here and I want to see what that can teach me, and I want to see how collectively we can share in that magic and walk away from it better. And I think that's my approach to being in Columbus, and that has very little to do with, you'll be amazed at how little people talk to me about the things I make, you know what I mean? I think, I mentioned earlier, I go into Roosevelt all the time on Long Street, because that's just, my neighborhood. And so rarely do the people in there, are they like, hey man, I'm reading your book right now, That's just never the conversation. Yeah. If I'm in Upper Cup, that's never the conversation. It's always about some music that they're listening to, or basketball, or whatever else. Yes, these things are passions that people can glean from my presence in the world, but what we're all I think what I am looking for in those interactions, what people are mostly looking for, is how can we connect with each other beyond, if we're going to live here, if we're going to be in each other's faces, how can we connect with each other beyond, I make coffee drinks, you make books, that kind of thing. And so that makes it really easy for me to say it's almost inconsequential. And also just the reality of the fleeting nature of just creativity and what production looks like. I could write a book, my next book could be, not received like this one. I think that if, I've been very lucky with this book. If the next book is received like this one, then I'll just retire. You know what I mean? And so almost certainly, you know, like there's a world wherein I don't do this forever. I don't know if I want to write books forever. I didn't want to write books in the first place. Like I had no aspirations of being a writer or an author. I worked like a 9-to-5 at a healthcare startup, and I liked it. Well, that's not true. I didn't like it. I didn't like it, but I was like, you know, I had like a long criminal record, and I had like, you know, so it was like a job, and I didn't anticipate this, and so to know that it can be taken away, or I can lose the fire for it, it requires me to be someone in this city, in every city, but especially here, who is a person beyond what I've made.
Yeah, so good. I'm so curious to know like how you specifically utilize creative arts as a tool for your own well-being, mental well-being, or even how like you first like came about this struggle or this wanting to communicate the entirety of the human story. Because like you can't read what you've written and think like it's all been good. You know what I'm saying? Like there's been like a struggle throughout your journey, but there's been peaks as well. And so how have you kind of navigated those things through creative arts and just through community?
To be like very candid about where I'm at mental health wise, I'm clinically depressed and have multiple anxiety disorders. Now, I've been diagnosed as those things since I was in my 20s. But also, I think more than anything, I've had to kind of, when I was a kid, Pringles would come in this, well, I think they almost certainly still come in a can. It's like the whole marketing. But it was a lot easier back then to peel off, and I know this because I tried to do this recently. It was a lot easier to like peel off the outer layer of that can and just see the like plain brown thing underneath it. And I would do that every time someone brought Pringles into my house. I would like peel it off and I would just stack them in my room for some reason. And I think what I was obsessed with more or less was just trying to figure out what was under something, you know? Because I tend to think that broadly, the things I wear outwardly are not necessarily the things that I most want to highlight in my work. One thing I get all the time that I got a lot this book toward, because obviously, like, if you come to this book, the reason why I was like, I don't really want to talk about what the book is about, because I had to do it for like a year already. That's not true. The book came out in March. I've had to do it for what feels like a year.
Feels like it.
And it's like, well, it's about basketball, but it's not really about basketball. But like mostly, I think the main takeaway of that book is that it's about mortality, right? It's about the time slipping away in increments until there is none. And so I had so many people coming up to me on book tours saying, well, you're funnier than I thought you would be, you know, because a lot of people came to my work for the first time with this book. You know, a lot of people maybe weren't there. Not that any of my books have been outright funny, but a lot of people maybe don't like see me joking around on Instagram or like see my broader personality. And I think that if I allow myself to be defined only by what exists on the page, then that also is that's really treasonous to my full self. And so I think a big part of me tries to be, the thing that I think people tend to get wrong, I don't really read reviews or critiques of my own work, but I read like the pull quotes that my agent sets aside for me. And early on there was so much writing about the depth of grief and depth of sadness in my work or what have you. But I don't think what that accounts for is that I'm someone who operates with a plain depth of feeling. And so the same capacity that I have for grief or sadness is the capacity I have for pleasure. It's the capacity I have for love. It is perhaps harder for people to access that, because in order to access that, you have to be interested in knowing me at a depth that exists beyond the page. And I think it is a lot easier to know someone by what they produce and only what they produce, you know? And coming off tour, I was like, I was realizing repeatedly, like, I'm like 20 different reflections to everyone else. I'm like in a funhouse mirror. I'm a funhouse mirror version of myself 20 times over because someone read something of mine that they liked and said, which I do too, I'm not immune to this. Someone read something of mine that they liked and said, that's the version of the person I need, and so that's the version of the person that is, and that's the whole version of the person. And I get that, like I'm not immune. It's not even parasocial really, it's just kind of what consumption is. Like it's just the form of consumption that is hard to detach from. But what it also does is, if you don't have something to return to yourself, you will become multiple versions of who you are, and none of them are you, you know?
Yeah.
And so the community end of that is impactful and important for me because I've been really thankful to have people in my life who are equipped to navigate my suffering, but perhaps more equipped to navigate my affections.
Yeah.
And so it makes me want to kind of earn that out.
Yeah, it's really good. What you were kind of sharing is like, you know, you go on tour, you write these books, everyone feels like they know you, but don't really know you. They don't know the depths of you. They know what you've shown them through your work and through social media. There is a friend of mine who is also in the creative arts. He's produced a lot of things. He shared that feeling and said, you know, I've actually had to navigate that and really identify it as like a really lonely feeling.
I was mentally, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've tried, I couldn't find good, this is funny, I couldn't find good language for this year because it's a very like woe is me thing, you know? I think to have written a book that a lot of people were excited about that led to a tour like the one I had, that is an occasion for immense gratitude because at this point, the majority of writers alive in the world either like don't want to ever go on tour or their books won't sustain it, you know what I mean? And it's also a lonely place. And what I have to do is build in guardrails. And this tour I hadn't been on tour in person since 2019. And there was like an audience shift that happened between then and now where things got about a lot larger and more intense in some ways. And so I had to build in these kind of guardrails. I came up on the punk scene in the Midwest here in Dayton, Chicago, Detroit. And a lot of my friends from that time now went to LA, as all Midwestern punks eventually do, it seems. And I built in this thing where after every show, as long as I was not in the Western time zone, I would call one of my LA friends and like read or make up a good bedtime story to their kids, you know? Like if I got off stage and finally got back to when I tell it at 11:30, I would ask them like, oh, you know, keep your kid up a little bit, I'm gonna call. And that kind of thing where to this 5-year-old or whatever, I'm just Uncle Hanif or whatever, you know, they have no concept of the world I'm living in beyond the world that we share together. And that's really useful to return to myself. My friends who are not, you know, my friends love and value but like every Wednesday if I'm home, my oldest friend in the world is here in Columbus and has 2 kids, and I just eat dinner with their kids and we watch Bluey. And we like play, you know, is it foosball, that stupid game with the like, yeah, don't love doing that, but her 4-year-old loves it.
Is it because you're not good?
I'm not good at it, yeah, at all. But her 4-year-old loves it, so that's what we do. And those kids have no concept of my life other than I arrive to them every Wednesday. I mean, they love me, or at least they're like formulating love for me in some way, I think, due to proximity. But to them, I like vanish on Wednesday evening and reappear next Wednesday afternoon. And that is the world I exist in for them. And that is really lucky for me to think about, you know? Like they're building a world around me that is so much more true to what I want the idea of me to be.
Yeah.
And I get to disappear and reappear and disappear and reappear into that world once a week. And in doing so, it refurbishes my own idea of what I'm capable of.
Yeah, so good. What's your favorite Bluey episode? We're big Bluey fans. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old at home.
Yeah?
Big Bluey fans. What do you got?
I like the one where they lose the... Wait, is there a Tooth Fairy one?
Maybe.
There is a Tooth Fairy one. I know for a fact there's a Tooth Fairy one because it's the one we watched last week.
Tell us about it.
I didn't really follow, I didn't really follow the plot, you know. It's one of those things where we put on Bluey and then we like turn the volume kind of down and then me and his mom catch up because it's also, you know, one thing that's been a real miracle for me, like I don't have kids, but so many of my friends are having kids, and I am very moved, I think, and almost require myself to have a depth, another way to talk about depth of feeling. The way that we love our friends requires a flexibility as we age. It requires real dexterity, otherwise we lose touch with people. You know what I mean? And so it's cool that to me that like, yeah, you know, and this is my oldest friends in the world. We've known each other for, you know, like we used to go out together, whatever. And now it's like, okay, we're gonna catch up in the 14-ish minutes it takes to watch 2 Bluey episodes. And that's just what we got. And we're gonna make the most of it, you know what I mean? And I think about how joyful that is to have that flexibility to say, I've loved you for so long that I know exactly how to love you well in a tunnel of time that is a fraction of what we once had, you know? That's a real mercy. That's also a real mercy, much like the fly not flying in my mouth was a real mercy. And I feel really fortunate for that. Like that requires a depth of knowing, and I think that's something I'm really reaching for in my friendships. You know, I have a friend now who's like, she told me, I love this is my dear friend Vivian, who's this is a very LA approach, by the way. She's from LA, and she was like, I was talking about the process of delineating being friends and being more than friends in whatever capacity that is for you. And she was like, you just got to talk straight. You got to tell them, I don't want any new friends. You know what I mean? And he's like, then you'll find out. And I was like, yeah, but I'm not opposed to having new friends. You're like, I wouldn't mind a new friend. You know what I mean? Like I'm very eager. I turned 40 last year, and I you know, it would be very easy for me to be like, every single person in my life is the person in my life, and that's it. But the reality is, and this is actually a thing that I know you're like, this is like a thing that I mourn all the time. The reality is, no one in this room at all, ever, is going to meet every single person who's capable of loving you well. You know what I mean? There's just too many fucking people in the world. Sorry if there's kids here and I'm cursing. There's like too many people in the world. You are not, a lot of them don't care that you exist. You know what I mean? Like, there's the math does not work out in our favor. And so there are people floating in the world who would be capable of loving us in the best possible ways, and we'll never encounter them. And that's devastating to me, but it also suggests to me that I already have people like that just a touch away, and I have to really foster the depth with which I care for them. And it also opens me up to just the possibility of stumbling across someone today who could be a friend for me for however many years I still have. And so the possibility of closeness also really helps deconstruct this like hierarchy of, I've made things and I want to sit in my little, I mean, I also like sitting in my house, don't get me wrong, but I don't only want to sit in my house because there's possibility outside.
Yeah, I've fallen victim to, like, as I age and as I have kids and my friends have kids, of like feeling like the friendship's not the same, or feeling like there's too much of a mountain to climb to continue to foster that friendship, or different things like that. Fallen victim to feeling cursed in a loneliness as a male in that sense. And because there is this weird feeling of like, if I can be home, I have to be home because of my kids, because of my wife, because I want to be the best dad and husband first that I can be. And then my friendships have fallen victim to that and felt cursed in that. Coming back to a little bit of what you wrote, because I thought that exact thing a little bit when you brought up this notion. I mean, you can take this so many different ways, but in one of the things you read, it says, it's romantic to feel cursed. Meaning that, like, it feels kind of good to feel like you're cursed in a way, because it's comfortable and you can like live in that space and you know that space and you want to stay in that space. How do you feel like people get unstuck from that ideology or from that thought process? Whether it's in the context you were sharing in the book, or whether it's the context that I was sharing there, how do you get unstuck?
It's funny because when I wrote that in the book, I was thinking about all my friends. I mean, the book does kind of center on Cleveland, so I was thinking about all my friends who are Cleveland sports fans who really revel in this kind of, you know, it's not us until it's us kind of thing, you know, and it's rarely us, but it might be us. And that is enticing. But I also think that projects onto real life. I remember when I was working on There's Always This Year. Every year I work with about 7 Columbus City Schools writers. Once a month, completely voluntary. We meet in the library and we just workshop each other's work. And I don't remember why this started or when this started, but we just do it. You know, it's just complete, like they could be anywhere in the world and they do that on a Sunday with me. And the key is that they have to workshop my work as rigorously as I workshop theirs. There's no hierarchy. It's just we step in the room, we're all writers. And so therefore, we all have to make each other better. And we're just required to. If I bring in some bullshit, they have to tell me that to me. You know, that's not in that language perhaps, but they have to edit the work as though they'd like it to get better, because we don't want to have each other out here with work that doesn't represent the affection that we have and the time we put in the room. I say this to say, there was a point, there's always this year where I was like really stuck. And I was complaining, and it was like, I don't think, this is in the middle of it, and I was like, I don't think I can do it, you know, like I don't think this book is going to be the way I dream it to be, because if you haven't read the book, it's really, there's like a lot happening in it, and the form is weird. It's a countdown clock that is descending, and the form is just hard. And I was like, you know, I think it's over. You know, I was doing the thing, the pity me because I think I'm cursed with, and I'll never be able to write this book. And one of them, a writer who I'd worked with for 2 years, who's now leaving Columbus to go off to Cornell, and I'm going to miss her a lot. She was like, this is, I'll never forget this quote. She was like, this is your 6th book, man. No one's going to feel sorry for you. You know what I mean? Like no one, you know what I mean? And that was real. That was, you know, it's like no one's gonna, you know, you don't write the book, then you don't write the book, but like no one's gonna feel bad for you. You know, you have by this point, and what she was also saying was you actually have the tools to do this. You might not want to tap into them to the degree that it takes. There's this way, like, I grew up playing sports. I played basketball and soccer in high school. I played soccer in college, which means that so much of my mentality around work and writing, I think I've massaged out a lot of the ex-athlete impulses I have, but so much of the work that I put into writing is very rigorous in the same way that, like, there's my old soccer coach's voice echoes in my, you know, ear, you know, it's like, so what I'm saying is, I think, for me, there's no emotional outpacing of a curse. You just have to be smarter than your curses, you know? Mm. And I would rather work really hard at getting very good at being smarter than my curses momentarily than I would to kind of wait for a signal to me that I am not in fact as cursed as I believe myself to be. Because if we are the only ones in a room, we can make ourselves believe anything. Yeah. And at some point, for me, I just have to be smarter than the things I convince myself of. And I'm not, usually. The poet Bosia, who I love his work, in 2014, maybe 15, got into a car accident, like a really severe car accident, where he lost the ability to like remember language and remember how to write. And he had, while he was working himself back from that, the end of this story is he came out with a book in 2017 called The Undisputed Greatest Writer Alive. And it's because when he was working himself back, learning how to write poems, he got himself a banner that he hung above his desk that said he was the undisputed greatest writer alive. And that doesn't mean that's who you are. That means it's what you believe yourself to be in a moment where you have to outsmart whatever thinks that you cannot, whatever parts of you are convincing yourself you cannot survive. And I know that well because there have been parts in my life where I have not wanted to actually, like literally, very really be tethered to the world in any way. Mm. And that, you can't actually wait for yourself to be saved from yourself, you know? In those scenarios, it requires more than just self-belief, but it's not a bad place to start.
Yeah, it's the whole adage, be careful what you tell yourself.
Yeah.
You'll become it.
Yeah.
I do want to open it up for a little bit of questions if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
So we can take a few questions for Hanif, and then maybe we'll stay here all night and ask questions. I don't know. Depends on how you define a few questions.
I would love to offer a moment of levity if you could expound on why no one thought of that so much.
Yeah, I don't, so Noah Lyles, the U.S. sprinter, here's what I think. And the fact that I think Noah Lyles sucks is actually pretty strange because he fits the archetype of athlete I like. He's black and brash and talks a lot. But the thing with Noah Lyles is that you can tell he's not comfortable in his own skin. Like I don't know if anyone watched the Netflix documentary Sprint that was like him, Sha'Carri Richardson, The Jamaican sprinter is Ricky, yeah. And he is so uncomfortable, I think. And that's why, it's okay. If you are someone who is like, I'm brash, cocky, talkative, and you're not comfortable in your own skin, then you're essentially just like an internet troll in real life. You know what I mean? And that's exactly the shit that Noah Lyles is always on. You know, even last year when he went on that thing where it's like, which is true. The wild thing too about him is that last year when he caught flack for saying that thing about like world championships, I actually agreed with him. But he was so corny about it. You know what I mean? Like, the actual statement he made is logical. Yes, it is ridiculous that NBA champions call themselves world champions because they are not playing against the world. Now, is there nuance to that? Sure. Should the World Series be called the World Series? I don't know. Maybe. There's a lot of players from different countries. I think the point is he was trying to get a point across that was real, and he did it in the corniest possible way. And that's it. And he's incredibly talented. I mean, like, immensely talented. Like, to the degree where everything about him is something I should love. And the fact that he has, it's almost like a superhuman ability, how he's leaped over all the things I should love and made me say, this guy fucking sucks. That's incredible. Like, I've never, it would be like, it is like the level of if I went home and literally Halle Berry was at my house and was like, let's do some kissing. And then, like 3 minutes in, she did something and I was like, you have to leave immediately. You know what I mean? Like, that is actually what Noah Lyles has done. That is the equivalent of it. And it's because he doesn't at all seem comfortable with who he is. And that is a bit heartbreaking because in sprint, it was so rough because you could also tell all the other runners around him were like, this guy is corny. Like, you know, like Fred Curley when he was, you know, it's just like, this guy again. And that was actually a little sad to me. So maybe I've come back around on some sympathy for Noah Lyles. Because, yeah, I think he's corny, I think he sucks, but also watching Sprint where I was like, oh, everyone around him doesn't seem to like him. And not because he's good. You know, it's not like we don't like him because he's good. It felt like it's really alienating, this dude isn't real. And that has to be a little strange for him. But he still sucks to me. Great sprinter though.
Just went on a journey right there. I also love how your posture changed immediately when she asked the question. Like, Noah Lyles?
Yeah, the Olympics have been fun though. I watched breakdancing this morning.
Oh yeah.
That was kind of. At first I was like, I'm not watching. You know, like when breakdancing started, I was like, I'm not watching this. And then 2 minutes in, I was like, I don't want to watch anything but this. That was incredible.
I'm putting on the replay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the Olympics has been incredible. Next question. Anyone got one? Yeah.
What is your favorite song to run to right now?
You know, a funny thing that I say this every year and it's never true. My running playlist is massive because in 2011 or 12, I started it, and it just means that any song that came to my mind at any point in the day where I thought this would be a good song to run to, I put it on the playlist, and I've done that now for 13 years. And so the running playlist is thousands of songs. It's on shuffle. And the problem with this is that it shuffles through whatever mode or mindset I was in at any given time. And so, like, you know, there's like Lover I Don't Have to Love by Bright Eyes is on my running. You know what I mean? It's like I was probably going through something at that time. And now it's just on, you know, and there's an easy corrective for this. The easy corrective is I delete that running playlist and then I form one that is really structured to who I am now and make a new one every single year. I don't do that. Instead, I just keep adding songs to that playlist. Most of them I never hear because of the shuffle mechanism that just keeps taking me back to like the early 2010s when I was very depressed. And so my favorite song to run to right now that I like specifically seek out, it's funny too because in my running playlist there's a lot of rap specifically that I would not listen to in any other format but running. And so DJ Mustard had an album come out a couple weeks ago that I did not enjoy for a few reasons, but mostly because it wasn't very good. Just the plainest reason. But there's a song called One of Them Ones that every time I'm in like the last stretch of a run, I put it on, and then the minute I finish the run, I'm like, why am I listening to this? And that's probably the best experience I can have, so I'm gonna say that song at the moment. But also I like Cut to the Feeling by Carly Rae Jepsen as a mid-run. That's like a good mid-run song for me. Yeah, that's like a good 4th mile tune.
Love it. Any other?
So my wife is somewhat of an aspiring writer right now.
I mean, for me, and I can't, I can only speak for myself and say that through the entire arc of our living, there is not a single story. My mother died when I was 13. I write about my mother a lot. I write about the loss of my mother a lot. But my story of my mother's loss is not the only one. My brothers and sister, and specifically my father, experienced a different kind of loss. But that does not actually mean that my narration of my experience with my mother's loss is any less valuable than anyone else's. It just means that it exists alongside other narratives that are equally as valuable and perhaps competing, equally valuable and competing. But what I do know is that if I did not tell the story of my mother's living in the way that I understood it, then A, it would never be told, or B, it would be told in a way that was unfamiliar to me, and that would be untenable. The reason I write about Columbus so much, and the reason I write about the Columbus as it was when I loved it the most, is because if I don't do that, then the stories of this city will go away with everything else. The stories of the city as it was before it was just a fucking like labyrinth of condos, will not exist. And so if we don't tell our own stories, someone else will tell them in a different way, and they won't have our best interest in mind, and they actually, more importantly, won't have our shared, or they won't have our lived experiences at their disposal. And so we'll kind of watch our stories be warped and retold and warped and retold. And it's important perhaps that there are competing narratives in our lives, because that's just what living is. But those competing narratives, even if they upset us, or even if they upset our own narrative, or even if they push into our living in a way that is unsettling, it's better than the alternative, I think. The alternative is an echo, you know what I mean? The alternative is just kind of an empty room where the stories echo off the walls to no one and then vanish. And that's a bit frightening, I think.
It's really good. We can go 2 more questions, if anyone has them. Going once.
They can be about whatever, as we've established.
They can be, yeah, Noah Lyles. Wait, what are your thoughts on Noah Lyles again? What do you think about USA men's basketball? I know they...
Oh, yeah, I mean, well...
Anthony Edwards? Like, are you following Anthony Edwards?
Yeah.
Like,
this is maybe the most skilled U.S. men's basketball team in history, and I think people are overreacting a bit to the closeness of some of the games. What people don't remember, the Dream Team, they were in 92, they were beating teams by 1,000 points, right? But what happened out of that is the birth of the international game happened. And so, of course, in 2024, Serbia's better. You know, like we're looking at the evolution. Now, the international game has evolved. What also is true is that you just can't smash a bunch of talent together on a team. And this team does have some chemistry gaps that just can't be filled. But I don't know, I gotta be honest, like Serbia pushing the US men to a game where I got to watch both a LeBron James triple-double and a Steph Curry 30-point game, that's the coolest shit in the world, you know, like that's not something I'll ever see in my life again. And I'm eager for the moment where I think the women's game has internationally started to kind of get back to, because I think the thing people don't remember is that in 92 and in the late 80s, like the women's international game was so competitive that U.S. wasn't winning. Like the U.S. assembled essentially the women's version of the Dream Team in 96 because they were just losing, right? And so now I feel like the U.S. women are just so much better than everybody else. Like I think if you can have Brianna Stewart and Asia Wilson on the same team, it's just, the talent gap is just too large, right? Yeah. But I'm eager for the moment where the women's game internationally kind of catches back up to where it was in the early 90s, because I think all of this makes people better. All of this sharpens, you know, if America is not winning all the time, that's just better for the global game, and eventually better for both the WNBA and the NBA. And I'm rooting for that, I guess. But I think the U.S. will win gold pretty easily. There's just too much depth, you know what I mean? Like, if Kevin Durant's coming off the bench, that's just too much depth for one team to deal with. You're gonna run out of gas.
Yeah, it's a little unreal. Any other questions? Yeah, right here.
So my question is about Olympic basketball as well. I have a theory that I think Steve Kerr is trying to dismantle the Celtics locker room.
Oh, because it's Jason Tatum shit? Yeah.
He's on it.
But do you think that Jason Tatum is really
I think here's the thing. It's so funny that so for those who don't know, today Jason Tatum's mom like was on some shit where she was like, "Why is my son not playing?" Which is so bananas. Like AAU helicopter parent behavior in the Olympics.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like on the Olympic stage. You can't. I mean, I'm not a parent, like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. But actually, I feel like I say this. I'm not a parent, but like lovingly, you cannot ask the literal coach of the U.S. men's basketball team, why is my son not playing? That's, you know what I mean? So I actually do think Jason Tatum is kind of unplayable in international play, and I know he was very good a couple years ago, but he relies so heavily on isolation play. And I like Jason Tatum, I really do. Like, I like watching him play basketball. But like, my brother, like the step back threes, you know, it's just not gonna, you dribbling for 10 seconds and then taking a step back three. The international game is all about what? Movement. Entirely about movement. It's about ball movement, it's about cutting, it's about back screens. He can do those things, what he really wants to do. You know, a thing about, I used to say this about J. Cole all the time, where it's like, you know, I like J. Cole the most as a rapper when he's just rapping about ignorant shit. But J. Cole seems to like himself most as a rapper when he's preaching to us. I like Jason Tatum the most when he's off the ball moving. I like him most when he's cutting back door, when he's catching lobs, when he's wreaking havoc running through screens. Jason Tatum likes himself most as a basketball player when he's dribbling out the clock for 20 seconds and then taking a step back three. And I was surprised he made the team in the first place, not just because the Celtics just won, but because this ISO play is not going to work in international ball. And I don't know if he's too good to be unplayable, but he messes up the rhythm of that team. And like, when you could see it when he was on the floor. I'm surprised Steve Kerr has played him at all. You know, like the minute he goes on the floor, he's a ball stopper, low key. And I love the guy. Anthony Edwards is not all that different in the context of Team USA. He's more athletic and more exciting, and I get that. But you can't have ball stoppers in international ball. You know, like everything is about movement and everything is about just motion. And I think Jason Tatum is an excellent NBA player who perhaps is not as well suited for the international game. I did think it was very funny that Jaylen Brown also didn't get selected for the team and then went on that like weird tirade about Nike. You know, the Celtics are good, they're going to be good. That said, no one would love seeing the Celtics demise more than me, and so would love to see it. Yeah, hopefully, you know, it's, I'm someone who organizes a lot, and one of the like Muslim organized spaces I'm in, you know, one of my dear friends always says, liberation in this lifetime, inshallah, like if God wills it. And I know that I should not perhaps affix that to basketball, but truly, like Celtics downfall in our lifetime, inshallah, you know what I mean? Like, would love to see it. There's like one other question, someone drowning in the lights back there had a hand up, I thought. Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know if it would break this question, so if you could just expound on how you feel that your sleeping dreams connect you to the people that you lost.
Yeah, you know, for a long time, and I think maybe still now, I don't remember, I still do not remember most of my dreams. I remember them if my mother is in them. A few years ago, because my mother, you know, I'm close to like 30 decades without my mother, you know, or 30 decades, 3 decades. 30 decades is, I wouldn't be alive, I think. At least I hope not. I don't want to live to like, I mean, you know, I'm in community with a lot of elders, and one of them is, inshallah, turning 100 this year. And that's really beautiful to me and really moving to me, and also not for me, I think. If I'm 100, I'm sure I'll be steeped in gratitude maybe if I get there, but right now I'm like, ugh, 100, like 60 more years, the planet's gonna be untenable. Anyway, 3 decades without my mother, and what has happened for me is that, I don't know if folks have lost someone at a young age but have experienced this, but you begin to kind of lose the material, you lose soundtrack, you lose, and so I've forgotten what my mother's speaking voice sounds like in the past few years. It goes in and out. I remember her laugh very well. I remember her singing voice very well, but her speaking voice, it's like I envision her speaking and someone is turning the static up on a radio or searching for a radio station, and every now and then her voice cuts in and it cuts out again. So it's just like switching through an FM dial. In my dreams, my mother attempts to speak to me, but I can't hear her. But I know exactly what she's saying when I wake up, you know? And that fascinates me, because I don't really remember any of my dreams ever. None of my other dreams really. Sometimes I remember sentences or lines. I mean, notoriously when I was working on, when I work on all my books, but especially there's always this year, I would dream a sentence and then wake up in the middle of the night, and I got really accustomed to typing it in my phone. I have this email chain of things I type to myself in the middle of the night that's like incoherent to anyone who would read it other than me. Or I would keep a notebook by my bed where I'd scribble keywords down. You know, like the first sentence of the book came to me in a dream, and I scribbled like 3 keywords down and then woke up and then typed it out on my phone, and the whole sentence. But when my mother is present in my dream, she's offering something often. And when I wake up, I know exactly what it is, but I still can't lay a sound over it. And that intrigues me. That's a different kind of grief, I think. The thing about loss is you don't lose someone once, you lose someone a first initial time. That is the inciting event. And then if you live long enough without them, you lose them repeatedly for as long as you're alive and they're not. And that means that you have to get accustomed to burying someone repeatedly, which, if not thought of in a way that is generous, can be too daunting to live with. But on the other hand, if you believe, as I do, that grief is kind of just an emotion that's knocking on the door of memory and asking you to recall something, then there's real gratitude in that. There's real gratitude in recollection. There's real gratitude in me reaching for my mother's voice even when I don't retrieve it, because I'm reaching for my mother nonetheless. And so a way that my dreaming grounds me is that it reminds me that I am losing a person over and over and over, but by losing them, I get to return to the site of their living that I can recall. And that is celebratory. There's nothing mournful to me, or grief can't only be devastating. It's also an opportunity for returns. And through those opportunities for returns, even if we don't remember the sound that carried us, we can create a kind of new orchestra that'll carry us for the rest of our lives. So that's maybe what dreaming has done for me.
It's beautiful, man. One last question for you.
Yep.
What are you most proud of?
I hope I haven't found it yet. I don't know. I mean, what I'm most proud of is that quite plainly and quite frankly, I did not intend to survive past 27. I had like plans in mind to not survive past 27. A lot of my friends did not. I did not want to particularly. And every day, year since then, it kind of feels like I'm stealing time, you know what I mean? And to look at it like that is really joyful, where it's like, it feels like I'm getting away with something, you know? And that means I can make one thing about the future is that it's gonna keep arriving, and I get to make whatever I want out of it. And so perhaps the thing I'm most proud of is that I've gotten away with about like 13 and a half years of pure time theft. And I've gotten to make some pretty good things out of it, and I hope to steal a little bit more.
Yeah, I hope you steal some more here too.
Yeah.
No, I speak for everyone in the crowd too. Let's give it up one more time for Hanif.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.